Welcome to the videos on Chapter 2, Being Ethical and Socially Responsible. The agenda for the videos is as follows. In the video number 1, we are going to discuss key definitions, and very briefly, we are going to mention some moral theories. We also are going to talk about factors affecting ethical behavior. And finally, we are going to talk about business ethics. We are going to talk about some ethical issues in business, some sources of business ethics, and finally, how to take and how to make ethical decisions in business. In the video number 2, we are going to talk about social responsibility in business and some of the approaches to understand the social responsibility. We are also going to talk about the stakeholders and stakeholder analysis. And finally, we are going to briefly mention some contemporary issues in business ethics and CSR or corporate social responsibility. So let's get started. First, what do we mean by ethics? So ethics is the study of right and wrong and of morality of the choices individuals make. So also an ethical decision is one that is right according to some standard of behavior or according to some values, some moral principles, some rules and regulations, and some rules of conduct. Of course, there is also research and philosophy that help understand how is that humans make ethical decisions or how is that humans fail to make ethical decisions. What do we mean by business ethics? Well, in this case, business ethics is the application of all these values, rules and regulations, rules of conduct, even philosophy to understand how business situations affect how people make decisions in terms of right versus wrong, especially when we talk about business problems and business context. I have here 4 of the principal moral theories: utilitarian, the one that is based on Kant philosophy, the third one is the one based on contracts, and finally the one that is about justice and what is fair. Here, I don't want to take too much time. I want to refer to some great videos from the crash course on philosophy. They are put here below in the YouTube comments. Okay, so for the people that want to check and want to understand these theories help understand how people make decisions in terms of right versus wrong from a sort of philosophical point of view. They are very interesting. They are very easy to follow, easy to understand. And I don't know if you know about crash courses, but if not, take a look. They talk about different aspects and different topics, in this case, philosophy and moral theories. So if we continue with ethics and business, it's important to understand the relationship between ethics and law. What is the relationship? Well, so ethics and law are related. They are not the same because ethical behavior and ethics goes beyond the law. Ethics deals with the proper relations with and responsibilities toward other people. On the other hand, legal frameworks deal with much narrower issues. Law usually refers only to laws that we have written to protect ourselves. Of course, many unethical acts fall within our laws, but some ethical and unethical issues fall outside the law, and usually the law is behind. It's always behind some of the right versus wrong choices that we have to make. And sometimes legal issues have a more definitive answer. Instead, sometimes ethical dilemmas in particular do not have a final answer. The next topic is understanding some of the factors affecting ethical behavior. So for instance, Is it possible that you, a person with a strong moral values, for you to make ethically questionable decisions in a business setting? What do you think? So there are three general sets of factors that explain whether a person make ethically questionable decisions. So first, we're talking about individual factors. In this case, we talk about, for instance, how much knowledge a person has regarding a particular case. For instance, an engineer knows about a chemical now product, and that this chemical product has negative consequences for the person. This engineer can have more knowledge or less knowledge about this situation. Also, people have values. People have goals that will affect how they behave when they want to reach these goals. In terms of social factors, we talk about factors that are related to how we relate to other people and how other people affect how we behave. In this case, we talk about cultural norms, norms that are shared by a group of people, could be an organization, could be a country, could be a profession. So these cultural norms will affect how we behave because there are expectations, they form expectations about our behavior that we follow in many cases without even knowing that we are following these cultural norms. Co-workers, significant others are going to affect how we behave in terms of, for instance, your relationship with co-workers, how co-workers compete to obtain resources in the organization. That will affect how you behave in ethical ways. The usage of internet, for instance, is also creating certain challenges, and we are nowadays trying to understand how we behave online in an ethical way and how we kind of change our behavior between online interactions versus offline interactions, how we share information online and offline. All these factors affect our ethical behavior, and we are in the process of understanding nowadays that internet is becoming so important for us and so important for organizations. Also, in terms of social factors, we're talking about trade association guidelines, for instance, professional ethics. We talk about physicians having a code of conduct, nurses having a code of conduct, lawyers having a code of conduct, and more closer to business, for instance, accounting. Accounting is one of the fields of study in business that is developing certain code of conduct because accountants can impact drastically the effects of businesses in the world. And finally, opportunity. So what do we mean by opportunity? Opportunity here refers to the amount of freedom an organization gives an employee to behave unethically or ethically if the person wants and makes the choice. So for instance, in some jobs, tasks are divided, such as the person that manages money is not the same person that makes decisions in a particular area. So in this case, this division of tasks could reduce the opportunities to behave unethically. Another important topic in this idea of opportunity is what is called ethical codes. These frameworks that encourage certain ethical behaviors and discourage unethical behaviors. One framework that I find very interesting, and even though it's not discussed in the book, I wanted to talk a little bit because this framework helps understand your individual development regarding moral judgment. So here, Professor Kohlberg, he suggested that a person improves and develops moral judgment when the person goes through certain stages of development. He has these three big stages, going from conventional or the pre-conventional level, which is called more self-centered, to the last one that is called post-conventional and is more principle-based. So in the first one, people do the right because they want to avoid being punished. So in the case of, for instance, you not cheating in the exam, why don't you cheat in the exam? Well, sometimes you don't cheat in an exam because you don't want to be punished. You don't want to receive a 0, or you don't want to fail the class. Instead, when you are in a kind of higher developed stage, you are not going to cheat because you have developed the principle of not cheating no matter what happened. Even if you don't know the topic, even if you have access to material that you shouldn't have access to. Here you are not going to cheat because you have developed a principle that you follow, and you try to follow in different situations no matter what, because you feel that is the right thing to do. You have developed this principle of not cheating because you think that a person, when is being assessed by an instructor, should receive the outcome that this person deserves following the rules that the assignment asks for. Here is called this post-conventional principle. In the middle is this stage called conventional level, which is more about conformity. Here in the level in the middle, we talk about the stage in which is very important the relationships with others, and the golden rule is very relevant. So if you don't know what the golden rule is, please check it out, and then we discuss in class more about it. So finally, for this video, we are going to talk about more in detail ethical issues in business. So businesses are contexts in which many different people interact with different interests, goals, values, expectations, and so on. So there are many opportunities for the development of conflict of interest and for the development of these ethical dilemmas, what to do in certain circumstances. So for instance, business people are expected to refrain from deceiving others, not in terms of customers. We need to make sure that we are telling the truth to customers, that a particular product is safe under these conditions and is not safe under these other conditions. The importance of, for instance, Samsung, when the company had the problem with some of the smartphones last year, it was expected that Samsung inform the customers about this because part of their health and part of their safety was at stake here. Also, business people should put the welfare of others and that of the organization above his or her own personal welfare. It's very important that we kind of think about others and the company, the customers, the stakeholders of company first and not the individual gain. But of course, this is easier said than done. Another aspect that is very important, and some issues could start happening when a business person takes advantage of a situation for personal gain rather than from the employer's interest. Also, it's very important that businesses communicate in a truth and in a non-deceptive way that is under a legal framework and very ethical. So there are many ethical issues, and we are going to discuss some of these issues in class, and we are going to do some exercises. So what can we do? So if we are facing all the time all these ethical issues, what people can do to kind of develop ethical issues and ethical code of conduct for the organizations. So here we have 5 steps. The book discusses these 5 steps, going first from listen and learn. Here the person needs to recognize the problem or the opportunity. Be sure that this person understands what is the situation, who is being impacted, and what are the consequences. Second, identify the ethical issue. Sometimes we don't even recognize that there is something at stake in terms of ethics. We need to examine how others are affected by the situation, understand the viewpoint of those involved in the decision and the consequences. Third, we create and analyze options. How do we do this? We need to put aside strong feelings, come up with alternatives, and this is where the moral theories help understand how is that we can make these options and create these options. Fourth, identify the best option, the most ethically corrected option. So there is this criteria to analyze caring, fairness, honesty, and openness that we are going to discuss in the next slide. And finally, of course, we need to explain your decision to others and make sure that their consequences are within the right framework. So here we have this graph that has 4 of these rules for ethical decision making. So let me start with the practical rule. The practical rule is kind of the more, perhaps a little bit easier to understand. So here, an ethical decision should be one that a manager or a person does without hesitation about communicating to other people outside the company. So here, in lay terms, you can think of this idea that if you don't feel comfortable talking about your decision or the situation that you are facing, is because there is something going on that shouldn't be discussed. But why? So this is kind of alerting that there is something more that needs to be done because you don't feel comfortable talking about it. You will feel that you are judged and that there is something wrong. The justice rule. In the justice rule, we are talking about a decision is right when the decision distributes or benefits and harms the people in a fair way. So people receive what they deserve to receive. The rule, the utilitarian rule, is a rule in which the right decision produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Here it is important to know how to measure the benefits and harms that will be done to the people and how you evaluate the rights and importance of each of these groups. However, this is not clear. It's not very clear, right? So, but here the important thing is that we want to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And finally, another of these rules is the moral rights rule. Here, the decision rule is to do what best maintains and protects the fundamental rights and privileges of people affected by it. Once again, please refer to the videos on Crash Course and Philosophy to kind of understand better these rules. These videos and these rules are not covered in the book, yet they are important to understand why is that business ethics have evolved in the way that it has evolved. So this is the first part of the video. So thank you for watching, and next it comes part number